It all started with a ding. Just a simple notification. The kind your phone makes 100 times a day. But this one cracked my peaceful morning like thunder on a sunny day. I was sipping my usual coffee, legs kicked up on the porch, not a care in the world, when my phone lit up with a new alert. New device attempted to connect, Karen's iPhone. I blinked at the screen, half expecting it to be some fluke. But no, there it was. Clear as day. Karen's iPhone trying to connect to my Wi-Fi. And here's the kicker. I live alone. My network is locked up tighter than a bank vault. So unless the squirrels have started browsing TikTok, there's only one Karen in this neighborhood bold enough to even try. And that's the one who lives exactly 8 feet away from me. The same woman who once filed an HOA complaint because my bird feeder was, and I quote, distractingly ornate. Before I could even finish digesting the absurdity of that name appearing on my network, I heard her voice screech across the fence like a fork dragging across porcelain. "Hey, your signal's pretty strong over here. Mind sharing the password?" she shouted, like she was asking to borrow sugar, not hijack my bandwidth. I sat there frozen, coffee halfway to my lips, thinking this had to be some kind of bad sitcom moment. Was I being punked? Did she actually just ask that, out loud, in broad daylight? Surely this was a joke. I let out an awkward chuckle, hoping she'd laugh too. She didn't. She stared right at me, waiting for an answer. And that, right there, was my first mistake, assuming Karen knew the difference between neighborly and nosy. See, on the surface, our community looks like the cover of a real estate brochure. Perfect lawns, smiling joggers, kids playing in driveways. The HOA keeps everything orderly, sometimes obsessively so. They're the type that sends a warning if your trash bin is visible for longer than 6 minutes past pickup time. But I've always kept to myself. I pay my dues, mow my lawn, and nod politely when people wave. I'm not here for drama. Karen, however, lives for it. She's the self-appointed sheriff of suburbia, the kind of person who thinks the HOA is a divine calling rather than a committee. Emergency meetings. She calls them because someone's potted plant doesn't match the street's seasonal aesthetic. She once measured her neighbor's garden gnome to prove it was taller than the regulation 6 inches. That's not a joke. That's Karen. I had somehow stayed off her radar until that morning, when apparently my Wi-Fi signal betrayed me. She leaned on the fence like she owned the property line, her oversized sunglasses glinting in the sun, iced coffee in hand like a judge's gavel. "I mean," she said with a sugary laugh that didn't reach her eyes, "it's not like it cost you anything. Sharing is caring, right?" I responded with the thinnest smile I could muster, without it turning into a grimace. "I work from home," I explained, keeping my tone even. "I need my connection to be fast and secure." That should have been the end of it. But with Karen, there's never really an end. Just a pause before the next attempt. Her smile twisted into something sharp. "Don't be so uptight," she replied, tilting her head. "It's just Wi-Fi. We're neighbors. Community should come before convenience." That line, it lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. Community before convenience. Translation: I should compromise my security and privacy so Karen can stream true crime podcasts while sunbathing in her backyard. At that point, I was still giving her the benefit of the doubt. I told myself maybe she was just being overly familiar. Maybe it was a weird fluke and she'd move on. But that hope didn't last. That very night, while I was catching up on work, my Wi-Fi started acting strange. Nothing huge, just little blips. Videos buffering longer than usual, files taking a few extra seconds to upload. It wasn't enough to panic, but it set off that quiet alarm in your gut that tells you something's off. So I did what any halfway tech-savvy person would do. I checked my router logs, and there it was. Dozens of failed login attempts, all from the same device, Karen's iPhone. She wasn't even trying to hide it. I changed the password immediately, making it a chaotic mess of symbols and numbers so absurd that even I had to write it down twice to remember it. And just to be sure, I turned on device attempt notifications. If she tried again, I'd know. The next morning, I woke up to find a note taped to my front door. Written in what I can only describe as aggressive cursive, it read, "It's just Wi-Fi. Don't be so greedy. The HOA exists so we can all share resources, not hoard them." No signature, of course, but none was needed. I knew exactly who it came from. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. This wasn't about internet access anymore. Karen had made it personal. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash, figuring silence would send a clearer message than any confrontation. I thought ignoring her would make her lose interest. But with Karen, ignoring her was like waving a red flag in front of a bull. 2 days later, at the monthly HOA meeting, she brought me up. Not by name, of course, she was far too clever for that. But she stood up with all the performative flair of a courtroom prosecutor and declared, "Some people in this community think their Wi-Fi is more important than our children's education." I nearly choked. I have no children. She has no children. And yet, here we were, somehow making Wi-Fi sound like a moral crisis. I glanced around the room, hoping for sanity, but a few people actually nodded in sympathy. The HOA president, a weary man who looked like he aged 10 years every time Karen spoke, muttered something about not having the authority to regulate private internet. But the seed had been planted. I was now that guy, the Wi-Fi miser, the selfish signal hoarder. Karen's passive-aggressive campaign had begun, and the worst part, I hadn't even fired the first shot. But that was about to change. Because if Karen wanted a neighborhood drama, she just unknowingly cast herself in the leading role. By the time the next sunrise rolled in, I was already 3 steps ahead. If Karen wanted a game, I was done playing defense. So I turned to something far more satisfying than confrontation. Clever retaliation. No shouting, no direct accusations. Just one subtle, unmissable message sent straight through the one place I knew she'd see it. Her phone's Wi-Fi list. I logged into my router, changed the network name to a new masterpiece. Not for Karen_911, and made sure it was visible to every device within range. It was password protected, of course. But the name? The name was a siren call. Not 30 minutes later, I heard it. A loud, exasperated shriek ripped through the morning air, echoing off fences and garage doors. "Are you kidding me? Is this some kind of joke?" she bellowed from her patio, her voice carrying like an angry town crier. I didn't even flinch. I just watered my plants, a slow smile creeping across my face. Moments later, the storm hit my front porch. She marched up and rang the doorbell like she was summoning a demon. I opened the door calmly, coffee in hand. "Yes?" I asked, as if I had no idea why she was there. She jabbed her phone toward me like it was a smoking gun. "This is harassment. I know you named your Wi-Fi that to target me." I blinked slowly, keeping my expression as blank as freshly painted drywall. "Why would I do that?" I said. "Unless you've been trying to connect to it, in which case that name would apply, wouldn't it?" Her mouth opened, then closed. Nothing came out. For the first time, Karen had no comeback. She stomped off the porch without another word, her heels clicking angrily on the walkway like she was spelling out curses in Morse code. I wish I could say that ended it, that she learned her lesson and moved on. But no, Karen doesn't retreat. She reloads. That very afternoon, I opened my mailbox and found a strange piece of paper stuffed inside. No envelope, no official letterhead, just a sloppily typed warning accusing me of inappropriate public network naming and disrupting neighborhood harmony. According to this so-called violation notice, I had breached some imaginary HOA code by having a Wi-Fi name that could offend other residents. It was absurd. The letter wasn't even formatted properly. No HOA logo, no signature, just vague threats and awkward phrasing. But I knew what this was. Karen had forged a violation notice and tried to pass it off as an official document. This wasn't just petty anymore. It was borderline deranged. Still, I wasn't ready to go nuclear. Not yet. I emailed the HOA board and asked if they had sent the letter. Their response was swift and clear. No such notice was ever issued. They hadn't received any complaints. The document was a fake. And now I had proof. Screenshots of the login attempts, a copy of the forged notice, even footage from my doorbell camera capturing her storming off in a rage. I had receipts, and she had no idea I was building a case. Karen thought she was playing chess. What she didn't realize was that I'd already captured her queen, and the board was just starting to tilt in my favor. For a brief moment, things got quiet. Too quiet. Like the calm before a thunderstorm. I kept my head down, watched from a distance as her porch remained empty and her usual parade of loud complaints and busybody patrols vanished. But just when I thought the Wi-Fi name had done the job, I noticed something strange. My lawn looked different. At first I figured it was just the afternoon light playing tricks. But when I stepped outside, I saw it. The ground was soaked. Not a light sprinkle. Drenched. My tulips, which had been just starting to bloom, were sagging, drowning in little puddles of oversaturation. I glanced over at her yard, and that's when I spotted it. Her sprinkler. It had been twisted, deliberately, angled so that it fired water over the property line and straight into my garden like a silent act of sabotage. I adjusted my side of the fence that evening, nudged it a little higher to block her rogue sprinkler stream. The next morning, one of the slats had been pushed out of place, from her side. I nailed it back in, tighter this time. Still, I said nothing. I wasn't going to bite. I'd already seen how she operated, and I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of knowing she was getting to me. But Karen, she was just getting warmed up. The second HOA meeting of the month appeared on the community calendar out of nowhere. I didn't even know they had 2 meetings a month. She must have pushed it through herself. And sure enough, there she was, standing like a self-righteous MC at a reality TV reunion. Some residents, she began loudly, casting pointed glances in my general direction, have decided that being selfish with their resources is acceptable. They're now engaging in cyberbullying through Wi-Fi network names that target innocent neighbors. A few murmurs rustled through the crowd. Confused looks. Someone coughed uncomfortably. I watched the HOA president rub his temples like a man begging for early retirement. Karen pressed on, waving a piece of paper like it was holy scripture. I've collected signatures. People agree it's inappropriate. Children see these names. Children. The irony of a grown woman turning a neighborhood into a digital battlefield while hiding behind imaginary children was rich enough to bottle and sell. The president cleared his throat. Karen, as we've said before, private Wi-Fi names are not under HOA jurisdiction. She tried to cut him off. He raised a hand. We appreciate your concern, but unless someone's network name contains actual threats or illegal content, we cannot intervene. We simply don't have the authority. Her face crumpled slightly, like someone had just told her they were out of pumpkin spice lattes. She sat down with a huff, but I could tell. This wasn't over. After the meeting, she strutted past my driveway, glaring at my house like it had personally offended her. I gave her a polite wave. Her face twisted like I'd spit in her lemonade. And that's when I knew. We were no longer in a petty spat. We were deep in the trenches now, and I had no intention of losing. Karen had no idea how deep a pit she was digging. While she spent her days trying to win a war with forged notes, petty sabotage, and theatrical HOA meetings, I had moved beyond playing defense. I wanted proof. Real, undeniable proof. So I upgraded. Not just the router, but the entire system. New hardware, full-spectrum device tracking, high-grade firewalls, and real-time logs that recorded everything from attempted logins to signal strength fluctuations. I even set up email alerts for brute force attempts. If someone so much as sneezed near my network, I'd know about it. Then I got creative. I renamed the guest network to something tailor-made for her wandering eyes. Try it, Karen lol. No internet behind it. Just a decoy. Loud, proud, and entirely fake. It didn't take long. Within an hour, she was pacing on her porch, her eyes bouncing between her phone and my house like she was watching a countdown. She knew, and she was furious. But she didn't come to yell this time. She stayed back, brooding. Still, that didn't stop the attacks. Later that day, my logs picked up new activity, rapid login attempts from a strange device. But this time, it wasn't just Karen's iPhone. The log showed multiple identities: admin, Wi-Fi breaker, even one named God Mode. Someone had gotten creative and clearly desperate. Then I saw it. A teenage girl, probably her niece or some neighbor's kid, loitering by the fence, tablet in hand, pretending to chase a ball. I handed it back politely, but I noticed the open app on her screen. Some kind of hacking tool with a user interface so basic, it looked like it was designed by a bored middle schooler. That's when I knew Karen had outsourced her mission to tech-savvy youth. So I set the trap. I created a brand new honeypot network, something that looked like an unsecured guest Wi-Fi, but was actually a digital flytrap. The moment someone connected, it mimicked a normal signal for a few seconds, just long enough to log their device details, MAC address, and behavior patterns. But this time, I added a flourish. Anyone who connected got redirected to a single custom page that read, "Hi Karen, this isn't your network, and yes, I still remember your complaint about the bird bath. Move along." I didn't even have to wait long. 10 minutes after setting it up, I heard angry footsteps pounding across her backyard. She didn't knock this time. She yelled through the fence like a town crier who'd lost her script. "You think you're clever? This is harassment, a hostile environment. I'm going to report you." I didn't answer. I didn't even flinch. I just went back inside and shut the door behind me, letting her echo bounce off the walls of her own fury. Later that night, my inbox lit up with something I'd been expecting: an email from the actual HOA board. Apparently, one of the other members had been forwarded a copy of the fake violation notice that Karen had slipped into my mailbox the week before. They wanted to verify whether I'd received it. I replied immediately, attached a photo, and explained the situation. The response was swift and serious. The board confirmed they had not authorized any such notice and were formally investigating her conduct. At that moment, I knew. Karen wasn't just losing the battle. She'd stumbled straight into her own downfall. But if she thought that was rock bottom, she wasn't done digging. The very next day, I came home from the grocery store to find a teenage boy, older than the girl from before, sitting on her porch with a laptop and what looked like a makeshift antenna resting beside him. He had wires strewn across the steps like he was trying to pick up satellite transmissions. He kept glancing at my house, adjusting his gear, tapping away like a hacker in a low-budget thriller. I didn't need to confront him. I just went inside and checked the logs. Sure enough, the connection attempts had multiplied, each with names more ridiculous than the last. It was laughable, but now I was done laughing. I reached out to someone I trusted, a cybersecurity expert I'd met years ago through a tech forum. A quiet genius, the kind of guy who could sniff out a digital footprint like a bloodhound. I explained the situation and sent over the honeypot logs. Within hours, he helped me configure an advanced data collection protocol. Now, whenever someone attempted to connect, the system logged timestamps, MAC addresses, signal strength, connection duration, and any known vulnerabilities in the connecting device. It was as if I'd turned my Wi-Fi network into a digital surveillance fortress. And then, just as expected, the same devices pinged my honeypot that evening. But this time, they stayed connected, just long enough for my system to grab everything. I compiled the logs into a clean, digestible report. Names, patterns, behavior trails. It was enough to sink a small tech firm, let alone a bored suburban villain. The next morning, Karen came to my door with the swagger of someone who thought she'd won. Clipboard in hand, a smug look on her face, she declared, "We're conducting a neighborhood tech audit. It's a new HOA initiative." I raised an eyebrow. "A tech audit?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "That's not a thing." She didn't blink. "It is now. Motion being introduced next month. I just thought I'd give you a heads up before we escalate this to legal." I let the silence stretch, then said calmly, "I'll wait for something official. Until then, please leave my property." Her smile faltered. She turned and walked away, probably thinking she'd rattled me. But I wasn't rattled. I was ready. Because everything she'd done, every absurd step, had already been documented and forwarded to the HOA board. That weekend, things got even weirder. I woke up to the sound of a microphone. At first, I thought it was a school event, but the voice was unmistakable. Karen. I pulled back the curtains to find her standing in her driveway, microphone in hand, under a makeshift banner that read, "Neighborhood Tech Awareness Day." She had lawn chairs set up, a folding table with flyers, and about 6 neighbors standing around looking painfully confused. "Good morning, neighbors," she bellowed. "Today, we take back our community from digital manipulation. We educate. We protect." And yes, she looked right at me as she said it. The flyers were full of exaggerated nonsense. Fear-mongering about Wi-Fi snooping. Vague warnings about one resident who manipulates network signals to track your children's behavior. It was so over the top it could have been satire, but she was dead serious. I didn't interrupt. I didn't engage. I simply took a few photos and emailed the HOA president again, this time with the subject line, "Update. Tech circus in progress." His reply came back quickly, and with it, something unexpected. Karen had already been issued a formal warning by the board after the forged violation letter. Now, with her tech awareness rally, she'd crossed into full-blown lunacy. The president assured me that it would be addressed in the next closed-door disciplinary session. I thanked him and thought that was the end of it. But that evening, just before sunset, a knock came at my door. When I opened it, a young man stood there, no older than 19. He looked nervous. "Hi," he began. I'm the kid Karen hired to help with her Wi-Fi thing. I didn't know it was like this." He handed me a USB drive. I recorded everything. She told me to run scripts, said she'd pay me extra if I could get in. But once I realized how weird it was, I backed off. I took the drive, nodded, and thanked him. He left quickly, and I closed the door with a feeling I hadn't felt in weeks. Closure. On that drive was everything. Audio of her giving him instructions. Her voice, clear as day, laughing about the fake violation. Her plotting, coaching, manipulating. The next morning I emailed the HOA board one last time. The subject line read simply, "Final evidence." I attached the drive and a brief explanation. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. Karen's words were damning enough. By Monday, the neighborhood was buzzing, not from scandal, but from laughter. Word had spread about Karen's circus, and someone from the gardening club had leaked one of the flyers into the community group chat. The meme responses were savage. Someone joked that the only thing Karen was protecting anyone from was reality. Another said, Is she going to name her next Wi-Fi cyber justice Karen? Then, the official letter came. I was invited to attend a private disciplinary hearing. Rare for residents, but the board said the nature of the evidence required a first-hand witness. I spent the day gathering my folder of logs, screenshots, and the USB. When I arrived at the clubhouse that night, the energy was different. The board sat with papers spread in front of them. Karen was already there, arms crossed, jaw clenched, staring straight ahead like she was bracing for a storm. The president read the charges, not just mine. Other neighbors had submitted complaints too. Flyers, fear tactics, forged documents. Karen immediately began spinning. This is a campaign to silence me. He's harassing me with Wi-Fi names. He's spying. He set traps. He baited me. Then I opened my folder. I laid out the logs, the screenshots, and finally, I handed the USB to the president. This contains audio and screen recordings of the teenager she hired to hack my network. He came to me voluntarily. They played a short clip. Karen's voice rang out through the speakers. Run it. If it works, I'll give you an extra 20. He needs to learn some manners. The room went still. Karen stood up in a panic. That's illegal. That's a violation of my privacy. One board member leaned forward. You mean the recording of your instructions to commit cyber intrusion on your own porch? Her mouth opened, then closed. The cracks had become chasms. The president leaned in. Karen, your behavior is unethical, deceptive, and in violation of HOA conduct policies. You are hereby suspended from all HOA responsibilities for 6 months, fined for the forged notice, and required to issue a formal apology to affected residents. She didn't argue. She just sat down slowly, as if all the air had finally left her lungs. Outside, the air felt lighter. The street looked the same, but something had shifted. Karen's reign had ended, and as I walked home, one last idea struck me. That evening, I logged into my router, typed out a new network name, and hit save. The final chapter in this ridiculous saga, now broadcast across every nearby device. HOA Karen suspended, and for the first time in weeks, the silence in the neighborhood felt earned.